They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Well, mine came on a silver flash drive, delivered in front of 200 guests at what should have been the wedding of the season. My name is Ava Mitchell, and this is the story of how I lost everything I thought I wanted, only to find something I needed so much more, myself. 3 years ago, my fiancé of 7 years left me on my 30th birthday for his personal trainer. Last month, I walked into their wedding with nothing but a black dress and a flash drive that would change everything. You think you know where this story is going? Trust me, you don't. If you're new here, welcome to Unfazed Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Your support means everything, and trust me, you'll want to stick around for more stories like this. My name is Ava Mitchell, former marketing executive, ex-fiancé, the woman who wasn't enough. Let me take you back to where it all began. I met James Harrington during my senior year at Columbia. He was in law school, brilliant and ambitious with the kind of confidence that filled every room he entered. I was majoring in communications, working 3 jobs to pay for school, and utterly enchanted by him. We were different. He came from money and connections, while I was the first in my family to attend college. But somehow, it worked. You're going to be the perfect power couple, my mother would gush, as if landing James was the crowning achievement of my life. Maybe that should have been my first warning sign. Everyone around me seemed more excited about who I was with than who I was becoming. After graduation, James went to work at his father's prestigious law firm, while I climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing agency. We moved into a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn that his parents helped us buy. I couldn't afford much of the down payment, but James assured me it didn't matter. "What's mine is yours," he'd say. I believed him. 7 years together, and I thought I knew him. I thought I knew us. We had a routine. Saturday brunches at Café Lulu, summer weekends in the Hamptons with his college friends, Christmas at his parents' estate in Connecticut. I planned my life around his schedule, his friends, his family. Looking back, I can see that I was slowly disappearing into the background of my own life, becoming a supporting character rather than the protagonist. His mother, Eleanor Harrington, socialite extraordinaire with her pearls and passive-aggressive comments, never thought I was good enough for her son. "Ava, darling," she'd say, sizing me up at family gatherings, "that dress is unique. I suppose that's the style these days." She'd turn to her friends with that tight smile that never reached her eyes. "James is just so generous, isn't he? Taking a chance on someone with such humble beginnings." I'd smile and swallow the humiliation because I loved James, because I thought what we had was worth the occasional discomfort, because I was certain that one day I'd prove to all of them that I belonged. By our 7th year together, we had it all mapped out. The wedding at the Plaza, the honeymoon in Bali, the 2 kids and a golden retriever. The dream. His dream, which I had convinced myself was also mine. Then came my 30th birthday. I'd taken the day off work, thinking James and I would spend it together. He'd been distant for weeks, canceling our dinner plans, coming home late smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual brand. I told myself he was just busy with a big case. I told myself a lot of things. That morning, I woke up alone. A text message blinked on my phone. "Need to talk. Meet me at Prospect Park, our bench. 2 p.m. Our bench. The place where he'd first told me he loved. The place where, a year later, he'd gotten down on one knee with a 3-carat diamond ring that felt too heavy on my finger. I spent hours getting ready, thinking maybe he was planning a surprise. A romantic picnic, perhaps. Or maybe he'd finally set a date for the wedding we'd been discussing for the past 2 years. I arrived at the park at exactly 2 p.m. James was already there, his posture stiff, his eyes avoiding mine. No picnic basket, no flowers, just a small duffel bag at his feet. "Ava," he said, his voice oddly formal. "I think you know things haven't been right between us for a while." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about? We're fine. We're just busy with work and I've met someone else." 4 words. Just 4 words to demolish 7 years. "Her name is Sophia," he continued, as if I'd asked, as if I wanted to know anything about the woman who had apparently replaced me. "She's my personal trainer. I've been seeing her for 6 months. 6 months. While I was planning our future, he was planning his exit. I've already moved most of my things out," he said. "I'm staying at her place until we figure out something more permanent. On my birthday," I whispered, the words barely making it past the lump in my throat. "You're leaving me on my birthday." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I didn't plan it this way. It just happened. Just happened." As if betrayal was something that could occur accidentally, like spilling coffee or missing a train. "The brownstone is in my name," he added, reaching into his pocket. "But I know it's been your home too. You can stay there for 3 months while you figure things out." He handed me an envelope. "This should help with the transition." A check. He was buying me off. What about our engagement? I asked, voice breaking as I touched the ring on my finger. The ring that had felt like a promise but was apparently just an accessory. Sophia and I are getting married in the spring. At the Plaza. He paused, perhaps realizing the cruelty of his words. You can keep the ring, sell it. It should be worth enough to. Get out, I whispered. He blinked. What? I said get out, I screamed, causing several passers-by to turn and stare. Take your check, take your pity, and get the hell out of my sight. He looked relieved, as if my anger was easier to deal with than my heart. He stood, picked up his duffel bag, and walked away without looking back. 7 years, and he didn't even look back. I sat on that bench until sunset, the engagement ring cutting into my palm as I clutched it, wondering how I had become so easy to leave. The first month after James left was a blur of wine bottles and takeout containers. I took a leave of absence from work, ignored calls from friends who had always been more his than mine, and spent hours staring at the walls of the brownstone that had never really felt like mine. The check he'd given me remained uncashed on the kitchen counter. The engagement ring sat in its velvet box on the nightstand, mocking me. I couldn't bring myself to sell it. Doing so felt like admitting that our relationship had been transactional all along. One night, 3 weeks into my self-imposed isolation, my younger sister Maya showed up at my door. Unlike me, Maya had never been one to follow the traditional path. She dropped out of college to start her own digital marketing company, much to our parents' dismay. But at 27, she was thriving, living life entirely on her terms. Jesus, Ava, she said, pushing past me into the apartment. You look like hell. Thanks, I muttered, self-consciously touching my unwashed hair. Always good to see you too. Maya ignored my sarcasm and began opening windows, letting in fresh air that made me wince. Enough wallowing. James is an asshole. You're better off without. Easy for you to say, I replied, collapsing onto the couch. You've never had your life blown up on your birthday. No, she agreed, sitting beside me. But I've watched you slowly erase yourself for 7 years to fit into James's world. And honestly, sis, it's been painful to watch. Her words stung because they contained a truth I hadn't been ready to face. I had been erasing myself, bit by bit, adapting to James's life instead of building our own together. Did you know, Maya continued, that you used to talk about starting your own agency, about creating campaigns for nonprofits and small businesses that were doing good in the world? When was the last time you even mentioned that dream? I couldn't remember. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped talking about my own ambitions. They had seemed so small compared to James's, so inconsequential. I didn't come here to lecture you, Maya said more gently. I came because I have an opportunity for you. My company's landing some big clients, and I need someone with your expertise. Someone who can think outside the box and isn't afraid to take risks. I laughed humorlessly. I don't think I'm what you're looking for right now. No, she agreed. Not right now. But the Ava I grew up with, the one who convinced our entire high school to boycott the cafeteria until they improved the vegetarian options. That Ava would be perfect. She pulled a business card from her pocket and placed it on the coffee table. When you're ready to remember who you were before James Harrington, call me. After Maya left, I stared at her card for a long time. Then I looked around the brownstone, at the expensive furniture James had chosen, the artwork his mother had gifted us. The life that had been constructed around me, but never really for me. The next morning, I cashed James's check, called a real estate agent, and packed a single suitcase. I didn't need 3 months to figure things out. I needed a clean break. I moved into a small studio apartment in Queens, far from the life I'd been living. And then I called Maya. Working with my sister was nothing like the corporate world I was used to. Maya's company operated out of a converted warehouse in Bushwick, filled with young, creative people who valued innovation over tradition. There were no corner offices, no rigid hierarchies, just a collective of minds dedicated to helping clients who were making a difference. At first, I felt painfully out of place in my pencil skirts and silk blouses. I was a decade older than most of Maya's employees, and my experience in traditional marketing seemed outdated in their digital-first world. But Maya pushed me outside my comfort zone, assigning me to campaigns that required me to think differently, to rediscover the creativity I'd suppressed. Stop trying to be perfect, she'd say whenever I'd agonize over minute details. Be effective instead. Slowly, I began to change. I cut my long hair into a short, practical bob. I traded my designer wardrobe, mostly purchased with James's credit card, for clothes that felt comfortable and authentic. I started speaking up in meetings, offering ideas that sometimes failed but occasionally sparked brilliant campaigns. 6 months into my new life, I landed us a major nonprofit client, an organization that provided education for girls in developing countries. The campaign I created tripled their donations in 3 months. Maya promoted me to creative director. See, she said as we celebrated over cheap champagne in paper cups. This is the Ava I knew was still in there. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were nights I still cried myself to sleep, moments I questioned every decision I'd ever made. But for the first time in years, I was building something that was entirely mine. Not James's, not his family's, mine. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee meetups and occasional dinners with men who were interested in me, not in my potential as the perfect corporate wife. It felt strange at first, talking about myself without referencing James, but eventually I rediscovered my own voice. Then, exactly 1 year after he'd left, I received a gilded envelope in the mail. James Harrington and Sophia Reynolds requested the pleasure of my company at their wedding. At the Plaza, the dream wedding that had once been promised to me. Throw it away, Maya advised when I showed her the invitation. It's either a mistake or a power move. Either way, you don't need that negativity in your life. She was right, of course, but something about the invitation nagged at me. The audacity of it. The assumption that I would have moved on, that I would happily stand by and watch them claim the future that was supposed to be mine. I set the invitation aside, neither accepting nor declining, and I tried to forget about it. But a week later, I ran into James's best friend, Michael, at a coffee shop near my new office. We'd always gotten along well. Michael was the only one of James's friends who had seemed genuinely interested in my life and career. Ava, he said, seeming genuinely pleased to see me. You look different, good different. Thanks, I replied, unsure how to navigate this connection to my old life. How are you? Can't complain, he hesitated. I guess you heard about the wedding. I nodded. Got the invitation, bit of a surprise. Michael shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, about that. I don't think James meant to send you one. Sophia insisted. She's something else. What do you mean? He glanced around, then lowered his voice. She loves making it clear that she won. The invitation was her idea. She wants you there as some kind of, I don't know, trophy of her victory. It's messed up. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. And James is okay with this. Michael shrugged. James is different now. Sophia has him wrapped around her finger. The firm's suffering because he's distracted. His parents are concerned. But nobody dares say anything because Sophia has this way of isolating anyone who criticizes. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a strange mix of anger and pity. James had left me for this woman who seemed to be manipulating him, isolating him from his support system. It was a classic abuser tactic, one I recognized from my work with domestic violence nonprofits. There's something else, Michael added, even quieter now. James's father is retiring next month. He's nomming James as the new managing partner, but only if the wedding goes smoothly. It's their way of trying to control the situation. Old man Harrington can't stand Sophia, but he's giving James this one last chance to do things right. As I walked back to the office, Michael's words echoed in my mind. The wedding was important, not just emotionally but professionally, for James, and Sophia was using me as a pawn in whatever game she was playing. That night, I took out the invitation again and looked at it with new eyes. Not as a painful reminder of what I'd lost, but as an opportunity. For what? I wasn't sure yet. But something was taking shape in my mind, a plan that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The next morning, I called the number on the invitation and RSVP'd yes. I had 2 months until the wedding. 2 months to figure out what exactly I was going to do. I wasn't interested in making a scene or causing a generic disruption. If I was going to attend this wedding, it would be with purpose. My first step was to learn everything I could about Sophia Reynolds. Social media made this surprisingly easy. Sophia loved the spotlight. Her Instagram was filled with workout videos, smoothie recipes, and countless photos with James, always tagged with saccharine captions like, living my best life with my soulmate, blessed love of Miller. But social media only tells the story people want you to see. I needed to dig deeper. I started by accidentally running into some of our mutual acquaintances. Casual conversations over coffee revealed interesting tidbits. Sophia had appeared in James's life, seemingly out of nowhere. She claimed to have an impressive client list as a personal trainer, but no one had actually met any of these alleged clients. She talked about a wealthy family background, but was vague on details. The more I learned, the more my suspicions grew. And then I remembered something, a skill from my college days that I hadn't used in years. Before settling on communications as my major, I'd taken several computer science courses. I'd been pretty good at what my professor euphemistically called information retrieval techniques. In other words, hacking. I told myself I was just being thorough, that I would stop if I found nothing concerning. But deep down, I think I was hopping to find something, anything, that would justify the growing resentment I felt toward both James and the woman who had so easily replaced her. It took me 3 weeks of late nights, but eventually I hit pay dirt. Sophia Reynolds wasn't her real name. Before moving to New York 5 years ago, she had been Sophia Reyes, and she had quite a history. 3 previous engagements to wealthy men, all ending mysteriously just before the wedding. In each case, substantial gifts had changed hands, luxury cars, expensive jewelry, even property. She was a con artist, a good one. Further digging revealed offshore accounts, fake credentials, and a pattern of isolating her marks from friends and family who might see through her charade. James wasn't her soulmate. He was her latest victim. I compiled everything onto a flash drive. Bank statements, court records, social media posts from her previous fiancés warning others about. It was damning evidence that could expose her for what she truly was. But as I stared at the flash drive in my hand, a troubling question arose. What was my real motivation here? Was I trying to save James from a predator, or was I simply seeking revenge for my own broken heart? I called Maya, the only person I trusted completely. "You need to ask yourself what you really want from this," she said after I explained everything. "Do you want James back? Because exposing Sophia won't automatically return your relationship to what it was." "I don't want him back," I replied, surprising myself with how true those words felt. "But I can't just let her con him and his family. Whatever James did to me, he doesn't deserve this." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "Okay, if you're sure this isn't about revenge, then you need to be smart about how you handle this. Running into the wedding screaming, 'She's a fraud,' isn't going to work. You need a plan that forces her to expose herself." She was right. A frontal attack would likely fail. Sophia would deny everything, and James, already under her influence, would choose to believe her over me. I needed to be more strategic. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Pre-wedding dinner next Friday at Harrington Estate. James asking if you're still coming to wedding." What should I tell him? I stared at the message, an idea forming. "Tell him I'm looking forward to celebrating their special day," I typed back, "and ask if I can bring a +1 to the dinner." The Harrington Estate looked exactly as I remembered it. Imposing stone facade, meticulously manicured gardens, wealth and privilege oozing from every corner. As I walked up the driveway, the flash drive feeling like a weight in my small evening bag, I questioned my decision for the 100th time. My +1 for the evening was Detective David Chen. Not really a date, but a friend of Maya's who worked in white-collar crime. He had reviewed the evidence on my flash drive and agreed that Sophia's pattern warranted investigation, though he was attending unofficially, more as moral support than in any professional capacity. "Remember," he murmured as we approached the door, "the goal isn't confrontation. Just observe, gather any additional information, and we'll decide next steps after." I nodded, took a deep breath, and rang the doorbell. Eleanor Harrington answered, her surprise at seeing me quickly masked by a thin veneer of social politeness. "Ava, how? Unexpected. James mentioned you might come to the wedding, but I didn't realize you'd be joining us this evening." "Mrs. Harrington," I replied with a smile that felt foreign on my face. "Thank you for having us. This is David Chen, a dear friend." We followed her into the grand living room where about 20 people were gathered, close family and friends who would be part of the wedding party. James stood near the fireplace, looking handsome in a tailored suit, but somehow diminished, less vibrant than I remember. Beside him was Sophia, radiant in a white designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. James paled when he saw me, quickly excusing himself from his conversation to intercept us before we could reach the main group. "Ava," he said, voice low and strained, "I'm surprised you came." "You invited me," I replied simply. "To the wedding, yes, but this dinner is just for family," I finished for him. I was almost family once, remember. Besides, Michael said it would be fine. Before James could respond, Sophia appeared at his side, slipping her arm possessively through his. Up close, she was even more beautiful than in her photos. Flawless skin, expertly applied makeup, the kind of fitness-stoned body that spoke of hours in the gym. "You must be the famous Ava," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "James has told me so much about you. I'm so glad you could come to wish us well." The implicit message was clear. "You're here on my terms, as a witness to my victory." "Congratulations," I replied, matching her artificial warmth. "I was just telling James how surprised I was to receive an invitation. Most men wouldn't want their ex at their wedding." A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. James and I believe in being mature about these things. After all, the past is the past. Throughout dinner, I observed Sophia closely. She was charming, attentive to James's parents, and seemingly perfect in every way. But there were moments, brief lapses when she thought no one was watching, when the mask slipped, revealing calculation in her eyes as she surveyed the room, assessing the wealth and connections around her. I also noticed how she subtly controlled James. A touch on his arm when he was about to speak, a quick glance that seemed to convey a warning when conversations veered into certain topics. He deferred to her in ways the James I knew never would have. After dinner, as guests mingled with drinks, I found myself alone in the hallway, having excused myself to use the rest. As I passed James's father's study, I heard voices, Sophia and someone I didn't recognize. "Everything's on track," Sophia was saying. "Once we're married, getting access to the trust fund will be easy. James doesn't even read what he signs anymore. And the prenup," a male voice asked, "won't be an issue. I've convinced him true love doesn't need legal protections. Besides, his parents are the real prize. Did you see the diamonds Alina was wearing tonight? The old bat has millions just in jewelry." I froze, my suspicions confirmed in the most blatant way possible. Sophia wasn't just after James's money. She was planning something bigger, possibly targeting his parents as well. I needed to get this on record. Slowly, I took out my phone and began recording. "Just make sure you stick to the timeline," the male voice continued. "We need to move the assets before anyone gets suspicious." "Trust me," Sophia replied. "In 6 months, we'll be set for life, and the Harringtons won't know what hit them until it's too late." Footsteps approached the door. I quickly slipped into an adjacent room, heart pounding. Through the crack in the door, I saw Sophia emerge from the study, followed by a man I recognized with shock. James's financial advisor, the person responsible for managing the Harrington family investments. They were working together. I waited until they were gone, then returned to the party, finding Detective Chen by the bar. Discreetly, I played him the recording. "This changes things," he said quietly. "This isn't just fraud, they're conspiring to commit theft. But a recording obtained this way won't be admissible in court. We need more." "The flash drive," I whispered. "Combined with this, it shows a pattern." He nodded. "But timing is crucial. If you expose her tonight, she'll claim it's just a jealous ex trying to ruin her happiness. If we wait until after the wedding, it might be too late to prevent damage." The answer came to me suddenly. "The wedding? It has to be at the wedding." "That's in 2 days," he reminded me. "We don't have enough for an official investigation by then." "We don't need one," I replied, a plan crystallizing in my mind. "We just need to create the right circumstances for Sophia to expose herself." 2 days later, I sat in the grand ballroom of the Plaza, watching as guests filtered in for what society magazines were already calling the wedding of the season. The room was a vision in white and gold, exactly as I had once imagined for my own wedding to James. I wore a simple black dress, modest but elegant, nothing that would draw attention. The flash drive was in my clutch, along with my phone, ready to record whatever happened next. Detective Chen had arranged for several plainclothes officers to be present as guests, a precaution in case things escalate. Maya sat beside me, having insisted on coming for moral support despite my protest. "You don't have to go through with this," she whispered, as the string quartet began playing the processional music. "We could still walk out right now." I shook my head. "It's not just about James anymore. These people are planning to steal from his family. I can't let that happen, even to the Harringtons." The ceremony began, James standing at the altar looking handsome but tense. When Sophia appeared at the back of the hall, there was an audible gasp from the guest. She was stunning in a custom designer gown that must have cost a fortune. James's fortune, I realized. As they exchanged vows, I felt a strange sense of detachment. This man, pledging his life to another woman, had once been the center of my world. Now, watching him, I felt only a distant sadness for what had been lost and concern for what he was unwittingly walking into. The minister reached the traditional moment. "If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." This was it. The moment I had planned for. I stood. A collective gasp went through the room. James's face drained of color. Sophia's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "But there's something that needs to be addressed before this marriage is finalized." Alina Harrington looked like she might faint. James's father stood, his face thunderous. "Young lady, this is not appropriate." "Please," I continued, walking slowly toward the altar. "I'm not here to cause a scene. I'm here because I care about the Harrington family despite everything, and they deserve to know the truth about Sophia Reynolds. Or should I say, Sophia Reyes? Sophia's composure slipped for just a second before she recovered. James, she's clearly unstable. Security should remove her. I pulled the flash drive from my clutch. This contains evidence of Sophia's previous identities and cons. 3 wealthy fiancés before James, each left just after transferring significant assets to her. But that's not all. I turned to face the guest. Last night, I overheard Sophia discussing her plans with James's financial advisor. They're planning to empty the Harrington family accounts once they have access. This is ridiculous, Sophia snapped, her perfect bride facade crack. James, are you going to let your pathetic ex-girlfriend ruin our wedding with these lies? James looked confused, torn between defending his bride and the seed of doubt I could see growing in his eyes. If they're lies, I said calmly, you won't mind if we play the contents of this drive on the projector that's set up for your reception slideshow. It was a bluff. I had no intention of humiliating James in front of everyone he knew, but Sophia didn't know that. She lunged for the flash drive, her carefully cultivated image of elegance completely abandoned. Give me that, she hissed, grabbing at my hand. I stepped back, keeping the drive out of her reach. Why so concerned if you have nothing to hide? Security, James's father bellowed. 2 men in suits approached, but Detective Chen intercepted them, discreetly showing his badge. Sophia, seeing her window of opportunity closing, changed tactics. She turned to James with tears in her eyes. Baby, she's just jealous. She's making all this up because she couldn't tell them. But James was staring at her with new eyes. How did she know about the financial advisor? He asked quietly. I never told Ava who manages our family accounts. Sophia faltered. She must have. And why did she call you Sophia Reyes? Is that your real name? The room was deadly silent, everyone watching the drama unfold. James, please, Sophia begged, reaching for him. We can talk about this later. Let's just finish the ceremony and answer the question, he insisted, stepping away from her touch. Is your name Sophia Reyes? Something changed in her expression then. The facade dropped completely, replaced by cold calculation. You're an idiot, James. Always have been. So desperate for someone to love you that you never ask the right questions. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Eleanor Harrington looked faint. James's father was already on his phone, presumably calling his lawyers. Sophia turned to me, hatred blazing in her eyes. You think you've won? You haven't. You're still the same pathetic, ordinary woman he left behind. He didn't want you then, and he won't want you now. With that, she turned and strode down the aisle, head high, ignoring the shocked murmurs of the guests. At the doorway, she was met by 2 more plainclothes officers who had been waiting outside. The wedding dissolved into chaos after that. Guests whispered and pointed, the Harringtons huddled with their lawyers, and James stood at the altar, shell-shocked and abandoned. I approached him cautiously. I'm sorry it had to happen this way. I tried to warn you privately, but I wouldn't have believed you, he finished, his voice hollow. Just like I didn't listen when you tried to tell me my mother was manipulating you, or when you said my friends were dismissive of your career. He looked at me with genuine regret. I never really saw you, did I, Ava? No, I replied softly. You didn't. He hesitated, then asked, what happens now? It was the question I'd asked myself countless times over the past. What happens after betrayal, after loss? After you've picked up the pieces and discovered that you're stronger than you ever imagined. Now, I said, you rebuild, you learn. You figure out who you are without someone else defining your worth. And us? He asked, a note of hope in his voice that once would have meant everything to me. I smiled gently. There is no us, James. There hasn't been for a long time. I placed the flash drive in his hand. This has everything Detective Chen and I found. It should help your family recover whatever Sophia and your advisor might have already taken. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Ava, thank you for caring enough to save me from myself. I looked back at him one last time. I didn't do it for you, James. I did it because it was the right thing to do, and because I finally remembered who I am, someone who doesn't walk away when things get difficult. 1 year later, I stood in the doorway of our new office. Mitchell Sisters created the agency Maya and I had founded together. What had started as 2 sisters working out of a converted warehouse had grown into a thriving business with 15 employees and a client list that included both nonprofits and progressive corporations committed to social change. My phone buzzed with a text from David, Detective Chen, who had become David to me over months of coffee dates and long conversations. Dinner still on for tonight. Have news about the Sophia case. I smiled as I texted back a confirmation. David and I had been dating for 6 months, taking things slow, building something based on mutual respect and genuine connection. It wasn't the whirlwind romance I'd had with James, but it was real and solid in a way that felt right. As for James, I'd heard through mutual friends that he'd taken a sabbatical from the law firm, traveling to find himself, or some such journey of self-discovery. His parents had narrowly avoided financial disaster thanks to the evidence I'd provided, though Alina Harrington still couldn't bring herself to thank me directly. Sophia and her accomplice had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and were awaiting trial. The case had made headlines, with journalists dubbing Sophia the wedding con artist. There had been talk of a documentary, maybe even a movie. Maya appeared beside me, coffee in hand. Ready for the Johnson pitch. They're waiting in the conference room. I nodded, straightening my shoulders. Let's do this. As we walked into the room full of potential clients, I felt a confidence that came not from association with a prestigious name or reflected glory, but from knowing exactly who I was and what I was capable. The woman James had left on her birthday no longer existed. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more whole. A woman who had learned that the greatest betrayals can sometimes lead to the most profound discoveries. I had lost a fiancé, but found myself